The rain pattered gently against the window pane. As I sat in my room, staring blankly at the half-written essay on my desk, my thoughts felt heavy, like dark clouds pressing down on me. Ever since my mom remarried, everything had shifted. Our once peaceful home in North London now felt foreign and cramped. I loved my mom deeply, but blending families was proving to be much harder than I'd imagined. James, my stepbrother, barely exchanged words with me. He was a year older, quiet, serious, and always kept to himself. I couldn't tell if his distance was intentional or if he simply didn't know how to connect with me. Either way, we avoided each other as much as possible. That evening, I was sprawled on my bed, earphones in, scrolling through my phone without really paying attention. My little brother's cries drifted in from the next room, and my parents were out running errands. I felt restless, like I didn't quite belong here. A sudden knock on my door startled me. Before I could respond, James pushed it open slightly and stepped inside. "Hey," he said, his voice low. He held one of my books in his hand. "You left this in the kitchen," he added, placing it on my desk. "Oh, thanks," I muttered, expecting him to leave. But instead he lingered. "You okay?" he asked, his eyes flicking between me and the clutter on my desk. "I'm fine," I lied. "You sure?" His tone softened. "You've seemed off lately." I hesitated. "It's just everything's different now. This house, this family, it feels like I'm living someone else's life." James shifted uncomfortably, shoving his hands into his pocket. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I get that." I looked at him, surprised. "It's weird," he continued. "It's not exactly easy for me either." He paused. "I didn't want to make things worse, so I figured staying out of the way was the best option." I let out a dry laugh. "I thought you just didn't like me." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "You're all right." For the first time, the tension between us didn't feel so suffocating. "You know," James said, "it's okay to feel lost sometimes. Doesn't mean things can't get better." I didn't know why, but those words stuck with me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't alone. "Thanks," I said softly. He gave a small nod and turned to leave. Just before closing the door, he added, "If you ever need to talk, you know where to find me." As the door clicked shut, a warmth spread through me. A warmth I hadn't realized I needed. Maybe this whole family thing wasn't so impossible after all. The next day felt different. James's words stayed with me, and for the first time I didn't feel so tense when I saw him at breakfast. He gave me a small nod and I returned it. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt like progress. Later that evening, I was back in my room trying to focus on my notes. My little brother's laughter echoed from the hallway, followed by the familiar sound of James's voice. He had a way of calming my brother that I'd always admired from afar. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps outside my door. It opened slightly, and James peeked in. "Hey, you busy?" "Not really," I said, closing my textbook. He stepped inside, holding a mug of tea. "Thought you might need this." I smiled. "Thanks." He lingered again, and this time I gestured for him to sit. He hesitated, then lowered himself into the chair by my desk. "You okay?" I asked. He let out a sigh, tapping his fingers on the armrest. "I don't know. I guess I just feel like I'm trying too hard sometimes." "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Fitting in here," he said. "It's like I'm part of the family but not really." I knew that feeling all too well. "Yeah, it's weird for me too." But the silence wasn't awkward this time. It was comfortable. "I remember when your mom married my dad," James said quietly. "I kept telling myself I'd stay out of the way so things wouldn't get messy." He paused. "But I guess I ended up making things harder." I shook my head. "You didn't. I mean, I never really tried either." He gave a small smile. "Guess we're both bad at this whole sibling thing." We laughed, and it felt natural, easy even. "Hey," I said after a moment. "If you're tired of hiding out in your room all the time, you can always hang out here." His words stayed with me long after he was gone. For the first time since our parents got married, I didn't feel like I was figuring this out alone. Later that night, the house was unusually quiet. Mom and Dad had gone out for dinner, leaving James and me to watch over our little brother. I was curled up on the couch with a book when a sharp cough echoed from upstairs. I set my book down and hurried to his room. He was sitting upright in bed, his face pale and flushed. His breathing sounded labored, and his eyes were glassy. "Are you okay?" I asked, pressing my hand to his forehead. He was burning up. Panic crept in as I grabbed my phone to call Mom, but the call wouldn't go through. I tried Dad next, no signal. My heart pounded in my chest. "What's wrong?" James's voice came from behind me. "It's him. I think he's really sick," I said, my voice trembling. James stepped inside, calm despite the tension. He knelt beside the bed and checked his temperature. "He's got a fever," he said quietly. "We need to cool him down." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "I'll get some wet towels," James said, already heading downstairs. Moments later, he returned with a damp cloth and a glass of water. "Here," he said, placing the cloth on our brother's forehead. "Help me sit him up." We propped him up gently, and James coaxed him to sip some water. His voice was steady, patient and reassuring. "You're all right, buddy," he whispered. "I've got you." I sat beside them feeling useless but grateful that James knew what to do. Our brother's breathing steadied, and though his face was still flushed, he seemed calmer. James stayed by his side the whole time, adjusting the cloth every few minutes and whispering comforting words. I couldn't stop watching him, the way he handled everything, how protective he was without a hint of panic. "You're good at this," I said softly. James shrugged. "I used to help Mom when she was sick. Just kind of figured things out." I realized then how much I'd misunderstood him. He wasn't distant because he didn't care. He stayed back because he didn't want to overstep. Our brother finally drifted off to sleep, and James let out a long breath. "You should go rest," I told him. He shook his head. "I'll stay a bit longer." I didn't argue. Instead, I grabbed a spare blanket from the closet and draped it over his shoulders. "Thanks," he murmured. For the first time, I felt like we weren't just two strangers forced under the same roof. We were family, and in that moment, I knew I could trust him, not just as my stepbrother, but as someone I could truly rely on. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, and I woke to the sound of soft murmurs. I walked down the hallway to find James still sitting by our brother's bed, his head resting against the wall, eyes half closed. "He's okay now," James said quietly, noticing me. "Fever broke a couple of hours ago." Relief washed over me. "You should get some sleep," I told him. He gave a tired smile. "I'm good." Later that afternoon, Mom and Dad returned home. They fussed over our brother,